Welcome back to Psychotropic Release. Let's get right into talking about 5meo-DMT, otherwise known as Bufo Alvarius or the God molecule. 5meo-DMT I have indeed smoked, and while it was literally on one hand the most terrifying experience of my life, it also killed my anxiety. I mean, killed. I went from a place of having severe anxiety to the point where I couldn't function, I couldn't work, I couldn't socialize. It was so severe, and somehow after smoking 5, I haven't experienced anxiety. Like, it's just gone. It sounds unbelievable, but it literally took my anxiety from a 10 out of 10 to a 1 out of 10. Okay, so I smoked the toad, as they say, but what does that exactly mean? 5meo-DMT is an extremely powerful psychedelic substance. In fact, it's the strongest in the entire world. While it is known to produce very strong psychedelic effects and spiritual experiences, it's showing some promising results to treat depression. So, not only does Bufo produce healing psychedelic effects, it also produces very healing long-term therapeutic benefits. When I was doing research on the internet and here on YouTube for insight on 5meo-DMT, I found a ton of trip reports and Bufo journeys being filmed, but not really anyone talking about the psychological benefits of smoking the toad. I think a large part of this is because it's considered a class 1 schedule substance, so it's still super illegal in the United States. Therefore, people don't have access to the psychedelic for either recreational or research purposes. It was made illegal in 2002, but it's used throughout Central America, and it's definitely here in Costa Rica. But like many ancient psychedelics, there's very minimal clinical research being done, unfortunately. So while we know the psychedelic effects of 5, we don't fully understand how it can be used for therapeutic purposes. But let's talk about what we do know. Okay, so 5meo-DMT can be found in some plant species, but it's commonly harvested from the Sonoran desert toad. Now, how it's retrieved from the toad is controversial. Because 5meo-DMT is secretion from the glands of the toad itself, and the only way this toad produces the secretion of 5 is when it's stressed. Therefore, 5meo-DMT can also be synthetically produced for ethical purposes. In fact, I smoke the synthetic version. So yes, technically I didn't smoke Bufo because Bufo is literally from the toad itself. I smoked 5meo-DMT, which was produced in a lab in Canada. At least that's what I was told. Anyways, each secretion has a different concentration of 5meo-DMT, and it can't be regulated. It all depends on the amount of stress the toad is in and other metabolic factors. Therefore, because of this, there's not one singular effect. The effects on the brain are not really known. Okay, but what are the crazy strong psychedelic effects you can experience? Well, essentially, you feel like you died. It forces you to have a complete ego death.
The toad, and it's on the Sonora Desert and it has the venom in it. And you smoke it. Once I tried it, boom! Everything is moving so fast. And when I fell out, only thing I was conscious, but I was out. My brain was still functioning, my thoughts, I could still talk to myself, I could hear my mind, and I was saying, I fucked up. And I killed myself.
Yeah, so as you can see, Mike Tyson smoked Bufo and experienced complete ego death. I think what he says in this interview perfectly explains the experience of Bufo. Your ego just essentially evaporates and you feel like nothingness. Ego gone, identity gone, physical body gone.
It was frightening.
Because of that ego thing, because you realize you're small all of a sudden.
Once I realized that I'm nothing.
5 is said to be 6 times more intense than NN-DMT. Alan Davis, who researched Bufo Alvarius at Johns Hopkins, has said, this is a very potent and powerful psychedelic substance that usually has an onset within seconds and a person is completely incapacitated, which indicates the ability of psychedelics at high doses to induce the loss of judgment to time, space, and the dissolution of ego boundaries that often accumulates in a blissful state and feelings in harmonious existence to cosmic unity. This unique, overwhelming experience fill in intuitive perception of psychological integration and harmony may lead to subsequent self-improvements, joy in living, and a sense of inner peace. So, as you could possibly imagine, the experience of dying before you could actually die could be quite spiritual. Here's, it's extremely moving and a very profound, intense experience. So, what's the significance of having such a spiritual experience for mental health purposes? Other research has shown that dramatic improvements in depression and anxiety symptoms were related to the intensity of the mystical experience. In a study, 80% of participants reported improvements in depression symptoms and 79% reported improvements in anxiety symptoms. This study showed that 5meo-DMT produced both short-term and long-term improvements in satisfaction with life, depression, anxiety, and stress. 4 weeks after smoking, people had a life satisfaction rate that increased 11% above baseline. While depression ratings had dropped 68%, anxiety and stress were also down 56 and 48%. Okay, so this sounds great, but what I'm even more interested in and amazed about is 5's ability to lower suicidal thoughts. Yeah, research has shown it could also greatly lower suicidal ideation. Seems a little ironic that having an ego death would actually make you less likely to want to commit suicide. But it works. As you could see in the study, the thoughts of suicide very much improved after smoking Bufo, as well as rates of depression and anxiety substantially decreased. The data showed that these negative thoughts were greatly lowered. This study suggests that a single administration of vapor from a toad secretion containing 5meo-DMT produces rapid and persistent improvements in satisfaction with life, mindfulness, and psychopathological symptoms, and that these changes are associated with the strength of the psychedelic experience, as I said previously. Also, I think something that's really worth noting is that very few participants reported the trips to be challenging, which I find really interesting and reassuring. 37% reported very slight challenging experiences. So I think that's, again, really reassuring for people who are terrified of using the substance like I was, but that's a whole other story. Research concluded that set and setting play a huge role in using the substance, and that a structured group setting lowers ratings of challenging experiences. When participants felt supported in a ceremonial group setting with support before and after the experience. Also, Bufo journeys are extremely short, about 15-ish minutes. Therefore, for therapeutic purposes, this could be very efficient, whereas substances such as ayahuasca require 7 to 8 hours per session. All right, so this was a very concise video about 5meo-DMT. I hope it was helpful. I'm really looking forward to seeing future studies on 5 regarding helping suicidality. I think that this substance can be absolutely groundbreaking, which is super exciting. If you have any interest in hearing about my personal experiences with Bufo or 5meo-DMT, please comment below and let me know. I'd love to talk about my story doing Bufo. I would also really appreciate if you could like this video and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more about holistic mental health and psychedelics.